Today we are going to start our discussion on cognitive processes, and one of the cognitive processes that we would be discussing today is memory. When we talk about memory, it is studied in terms of mental processes that are involved in storage and retrieval of information. You have already talked about learning, and the difference between learning processes and the memory processes are that learning emphasizes on acquisition, whereas memory emphasizes on retention and retrieval of information. Now, memory system stores information acquired through our sense modalities. When we discussed the different sense modalities in perception, we have already talked about the different type of sense modalities through which our brain acquires information. Now, when once these informations come, memory system basically has to do with the storage of it, and finally, whenever needed, it can be retrieved. It consists of many systems ranging from storage duration, that could be from fraction of seconds to lifetime, and buffer storage, that is just for a brief period of time, to long term memory. Now, memory is our cognitive systems for storage and retrieval of information. Now, let us look at this video. This young little boy is memorizing English alphabets. He repeatedly reads A, B, C, D and so forth. Memory is all about understanding how he stores this information for future usage. Three distinct processes are involved in our memory processes: encoding, storage and retrieval. Encoding is the process which involves transformation of a physical stimulus into a form that human memory system accepts, whereas storage basically refers to the retention of the encoded information, whereas retrieval is recovering the information from the storage whenever it is needed. Atkinson and Shiffrin gave a model in 1968, what is popularly called as the information processing theory, whereas he talked about the sensory memory, short term memory and the long term memory. Now, let us look at what actually this theory is about. Richard Atkinson and Richard Shiffrin, they proposed a model of memory in 1968. According to them, memory starts with a sensory input received from the environment. This input is retained for a very brief time, ranging from 0.25 seconds to 2 seconds. Some of these inputs are attended and rehearsed. Such input pass on to short term memory. The unattended inputs are not transferred to short term memory and are forgotten. The inputs can be held in the short term memory for 20 to 30 seconds. If they are further rehearsed, they pass on to long term memory. The unrehearsed ones are forgotten. The inputs moving to the long term memory are organized into categories. They may remain here for days, months or even lifelong and can be retrieved as and when needed. Decay and interference are some of the factors that lead to loss of information from a long term storage. In 1972, Craik and Lockhart came forward with another theory of memory, which is called as the level of processing theory, and this very model was later on revised just 3 years later in 1975 by Craik and Tulving. This model is based on the operations carried out for perceiving and interpreting the stimulus, with an emphasis on discrimination. According to this model, the incoming information can be processed at 3 different levels: perceptual level, structural level and semantic level. At perceptual level, one becomes aware of the immediate environment. Structural level is somewhat deeper compared to the perceptual level. Here one emphasizes the structural features of the information. The deepest level of processing is the semantic level. Here one derives profound meaning of the information. This model explicates that deeper the processing, more is the elaboration. In other words, deeper and meaningful analysis leads to durable memory of the information. Higher the elaboration, more are the chances that the newly derived meaning integrates with the existing memories. The third viewpoint on memory processes are the neural network perspective, which says that a group of modules simultaneously processes information. Memory is formation and strengthening of interconnection between these modules. Activation and spreading are central to memory system. Now, primarily when you include all of these information and combine them to describe what memory means, this is what you get. If you summarize the existing knowledge on memory system, Then our sensory register mostly gets information from the visual, auditory and the haptic senses. The rehearsed information then moves to the short term memory system. Those encoded and rehearsed further move to the long term memory system. Depending on our decision to respond to the environment, we use certain retrieval strategies to get the desired information from the long term storage. The response outputs are mediated by our working memory. Now, let us come back to sensory memory once again. We have already discussed the visual, hearing, smell, taste and the synesthetic processes when we were talking about perception. Although we receive sensation from all these sense modules, visual and auditory system based memory processes have been studied most in behavioral sciences. Studies are also available on the haptic sensation based memory. Hence, here we will go into the details of the visual on the auditory memory, which are called as iconic and echoic memory respectively. The iconic and echoic memory store visual and auditory information as part of processes involved in perception. Both these sense modalities are distinctive as they allow the initial stimulus to be prolonged. This ensures the probability of processing at a later stage. Now, iconic memory can hold information for up to 1 to 2 seconds, and most importantly 11 to 16 items can be held at iconic memory. It can hold features such as color, shape and direction, but the two limitations it faces are brightness masking and the pattern masking. As far as the experimentation based on iconic memory goes, I would like to mention the Sperling's experiment here, wherein 13 to 16 alphanumeric characters were displayed for a shorter period of time, and the memory performance was compared under whole and partial report conditions. The whole report condition required that the recall of as many displayed elements as possible should be made. What was found was that irrespective of characters displayed, 4 to 5 characters were recollected, whereas in the partial report condition the requirement was the identification of a subset of the characters within the visual display. Better memory than whole report procedure for short interval following exposure was found here, and partial report suggests retention of about 12 characters from a 16 character array immediately after presentation of it. Now, in a very recent study, Blazer and Calde in 2010, they just looked at the iconic memory in infants, and what they were actually looking at was the capacity of the iconic memory, which was measured in the infants using the modified Sperling's partial report paradigm. 6-month-old infants could store color related information of up to 5 items in their iconic memory. This is what was found. Now, we come to echoic memory. Echoic memory holds information for up to about 4 to 5 seconds and can store sequences of at least 250 milliseconds or more. For long, iconic memory was considered as a short term sensory buffer, and after the work of Phillips in 1971, people accepted visual short term memory, and we are referring to it as VSTM. Now, visual short term memory is a type of short term memory limited exclusively to the visual information. Iconic memories decay rapidly, whereas the visual short term memory lasts over many seconds. Information held for 20 to 30 seconds, and thereafter it is displayed by incoming information in the short term memory. Information encoded in short term memory is acoustic in nature, and therefore, speech, sound, visual images and words all find its place in the short term memory, and most importantly it is semantic in nature, and therefore, meaningful words may be stored easily as compared to nonsense syllables. For their lab experimentation, psychologists have primarily banked upon nonsense syllables, which are actually letter combinations that does not give any meaning. Now, you could have nonsense syllables which have only 2 letters, they are called bigrams. They could have 3 letters, they are called trigrams, and of course, you can have it 4 letters which are called quadragrams. But usually you would find the trigrams being generously used for behavioral researches. And once again in trigram you could have 2 possibilities. You could have a CCC combination or you could have a CVC combination. CCC is actually consonant, consonant, consonant. So, you do not take vowels into account. So, that would be a CCC makeup. and you could have a CVC constitution where you have consonant, vowel, consonant. Now, when you look at these two columns, CYB and LXK are CCC combination, whereas XAT and XOQ are CVC trigrams, where in the center you have a vowel. Now, when you have vowels in the center, pronunciation becomes easier, and therefore, the more you are now able to pronounce it, the discrete encoding of the information will not be there, and therefore, recall could be little be better for the CVC combinations compared to CCC combination. For example, if I have to memorize LXK, okay, I can't have a word. So, I will have to process it as discrete letters LXK, whereas no, I can have SOQ, SOQ I can pronounce as SOQ, and therefore, I can just put them together. So, when you add a vowel in the nonsense syllable, it becomes easier for you to memorize it. Let us see and understand it by doing it ourselves. Thankfully, two students have agreed to assist me in this demo. What I intend to show you is not the CCC or CVC combination, but the difference between the recall of meaningful words as compared to those which are meaningless. I am also taking care of the graded difficulty level. Hence, the first word to appear on the screen would have 3 alphabets, the second would have 4, and so on. The last word will have 10 alphabets. Both of you should focus on the screen. Few nonsense syllables and meaningful words will appear on it. You have to write them when I ask you to do so. Now, write all that you can recall. Let us now see the outcome for the meaningful words. It is very obvious that both the participants could recollect more meaningful words as compared to the nonsense syllables. Both the participants could recall only 3 nonsense syllables. However, the first participant came forward with only one correct recall, that is XAT. The second participant succeeded giving two correct responses, XAT and LIQW. As far as meaningful words are concerned, the first participant could recall all 8 words. The second participant could recall 6 words. So, what we find is that the recall of meaningful words will always be better as compared to meaningless content. Now, short term memory can hold 5 to 9 chunks of information and several items can be combined into one single chunk. About 7 such chunks can be retained in the short term memory. About 40 items therefore, can be combined into 7 chunks and can be held in the short term storage. The important processes in short term memory are one, the serial position effect, which talks about the primacy and the recency effect. Now, serial position means when you are storing information in the same sequence in which it has been presented to you, and therefore, the primacy effect basically tells that there is a better recall of items that find its place in the beginning of the list, whereas the recency effects refers to the fact that items that are encountered most recently are remembered well. This means that when you have a long list of items to memorize, those which finds its place on the top and those which finds its place in the bottom, they have the maximum likelihood of getting retained. Let us have another demo. This is to get a feel of serial position effect. Here, 2 lists of words are being presented to the participants. One has meaningful words, while the other contains nonsense syllables. Unlike the previous demo, both lists have equal number of alphabets, that is, all of them have 3 alphabets. What I am going to do now is that I will read aloud few words, okay? And whatever you are able to recollect, you will have to write. Right now, I will be reading aloud list A. Listen it carefully. Pub, rat, ton, sun, bin, mug, sir, man, dog, hut. Now, I am reading aloud list B. KZL, PRS, UNS, JWS, FMC, VLK, XON, BNQ, CFK, SFR. You now have to write list A. Okay, now write list B. That is it. Okay. Now, let me do something. I am just trying to see whatever was correct and whatever was wrong. Okay. Now, PUB is correct, okay, and this was serial number 1. Then you wrote SIR, this is correct, and this comes at serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then SON is incorrect, rather instead of O it was U, okay. And then TIN, which is again wrong, okay, and it was actually ton, okay. And the position of SUN, sun, was first, second, third, fourth, okay, and TON was third. So, if you see your recall order, no, item number 1, then 7, 4 and 7, where there was some interchange. Okay. So, this O went here and I got repeated here. Okay. And now, I come to list B, FMC is correct, okay, and this was first, second, third, fourth, fifth in the list. XLS was not in the list. Okay. So, this is wrong, X was there, okay, and then X actually had O and N. So, this was a gross mistake from that point of view. Okay. Thank you. It is your turn now. Okay. List B now. That is it. Okay. Now, let me see what have you done. PUB is correct, and this it was first in the list. Then you have written DOG, this is correct, and this was 9th in the list. Then you had HUT is correct, and this is 10th in the list. And then SIR, which was also correct, and this was first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7th in the list. Okay. When we come to list B, XOM, this is wrong, it should have been XON. Okay. Then FMC is correct, first, second, third, fourth, this is at the 5th number. SFL is also wrong, and then you had SUV, this too is incorrect. Okay. So, you saw that beside better recall of meaningful words, the order of presentation also affects our short term memory. This demonstrates serial position effect. Now, primacy effect is observed during delayed recall, because the initial items get time to be put into long term storage during the presentation of this stimulus. We now come to short term auditory memory. Now, there are evidence of two short term auditory stores. One operates over a time scale of 150 to 350 milliseconds, whereas the other one lasts somewhere between 2 to 20 seconds. And there are once again modality effect and the recency effect in short term auditory memory also. Modality effect basically refers to the advantage to spoken terms, whereas recency effect, as we have discussed, refers to enhanced recall of the most recently presented items. So, in short term storage, one of the important concepts also is that you get a chance to rehearse the information that is given to you, and therefore, rehearsal in short term refers to the process of keeping information in the center of attention. Now, rehearsal could be of two types, either it could be maintenance rehearsal or it could be elaborative rehearsal. Maintenance rehearsal basically refers to the repetition of information over and over again. It does not necessarily succeed transferring the information into long term memory, but of course, it helps you maintain the information for little more time. Whereas, in the elaborative rehearsal, one organizes the given material and gives meaning to it as it is being rehearsed, and therefore, this helps in fitting it with the existing organized long term memory. In short term memory, 7 plus minus 2 chunks of memory can be kept in mind at a time and combined to make a decision. Now, 7 plus minus 2, which is also called as the magic number, basically means that 7 minus 2, that would be 5, and 7 plus 2, that would be 9. So, 5 to 9 chunks of information, one can use them, combine them in their memory to make a decision. The size of the chunk varies greatly between experts and novices. Experts can combine many memory units to the whole. For example, now when chess players, the master chess players, they can retain a series of moves while playing the game, whereas novices they fail to do so. Now, we come to another interesting concept in memory, what is called as the working memory. Alan Baddeley gave a model of working memory in 1986, where he talked about three important segments: 1, articulatory loop; 2, the visuospatial sketchpad, at times you find it written scratchpad also, and then the central executive. The articulatory loop is basically the site of verbal rehearsal. The visuospatial scratchpad or sketchpad is the site of rehearsal of visually presented information, and then we have the central executive, which has added tasks to perform. Alan Baddeley's model of working memory comprises of three things: central executive, articulatory loop, and visuospatial sketchpad. The central executive has a control over things and plays role in decision making. Reasoning, language comprehension and transfer of information to long term memory are the tasks that it controls. Recency effect is also a function of the central executive. The central executive depends upon articulatory lobe. It is also known as phonological lobe. It is a short term buffer where verbal rehearsal takes place. The articulatory loop recycles items to facilitate immediate recall. The central executive also depends upon visuospatial sketchpad. It is also known as visuospatial scratchpad, as I told you, and it has to do with the rehearsal of visually presented information. Now, let us look at the location of the working memory in the brain. This animation shows you the location of working memory in the brain. This is area 12 of the brain and is responsible for object related working memory. Close to it is area 47, which is responsible for face working memory, and this is area 46 and it is responsible for spatial working memory. Now, let us talk about how information is organized in the short term memory. Now, organization of information in the short term memory is actually when the chunks are organized in hierarchical order. Now, you can see here in short term chunks are organized in hierarchical order, wherein you have something like, say, if you have these numbers 0.25, 2.5, 4.2 and 5.5, they are organized in certain hierarchical order. So, once you organize the information that you have in a hierarchical order, it becomes easy for you to organize it and therefore, to remember it. Now, let us come to long term memory. Long term memory stores information over a long time. It has unlimited capacity. Now, long term memory can be of two types: declarative memory and procedural memory, and declarative memory can also be divided into semantic and episodic memory, and further episodic memory can be specified as specific memory and autobiographical memory. Tulving, one of the popular Canadian psychologists, was the first to make a distinction between episodic and semantic memory. Now, in long term auditory memory, we talk about memory for language, memory for music and memory for voice. Memory for language refers to the meaning that are stored rather than sound, and most importantly, as far as music is concerned, the information pertaining to contours and pitches interval, they are both retained. Look at the clip to see an actual attempt by a child to memorize a poem.
Clap your hands.
Clap your hands.
Clap your hands.
Clap, 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 clap your hands.
Listen to the music.
Clap your hands.
Roll your hands.
Roll your hands. Roll your hands.
Listen to the music. Roll your hands.
Listen to the music. Roll your hands.
Stamp your feet.
Stand for pitch.
Stamp your feet.
Stand for pitch.
Listen to the music. Stamp your feet.
Stand for P. Stand for P. Stand PP. Stand for P. Listen to the music. Stand for P.
Jump up high.
Jump up high.
Jump.
Jump up high. Listen to the music. Jump up high.
Turn around.
Turn around.
Turn around.
Turn around. Listen to the music.
Now, when you looked at this movie, you actually found that the child was not able to pick the language, even though the mother was trying to make the child recite the poem. The child was not actually able to pick the words, and therefore, there was certain errors. But what is interesting is that the contours and the pitch interval, that is something that we are referring to with respect to memory for music, the child is able to do so. We also have reasonably good voice recognition of familiar person compared to those who are strangers. Let us now talk about episodic memory. Episodic memory primarily represents experiences and memory of events in a serial form. All the records of our past experiences and the episodes of our daily life, they actually constitute the episodic memory. We have the factual information that we have acquired at a given point in time, at a very specific time you have got something, or you have episodic memory is something where you keep on leading your life in a normal way, you have certain specific experiences that you are able to recollect, and then it is either in the form of episodes or you have it a long sequence of events that you break it into significant episodes of your life. Now, episodic memory is more susceptible to forgetting as compared to semantic memory, because in the case of semantic memory you look at things from the meaning that it contains, whereas here it is more of the event and not the meaning that you derive out of it. Throughout this course, an attempt has been made to give you more real life example, but several historical facts are unique and perhaps will never get repeated. We will refer to a couple of such unforgettable episodes from the human history to have a much clearer understanding of the memory processes. We all have read about the Vietnam War that took place from November 1955 to April 1975. For many of us, it is history. For some, it is part of their episodic memory. See how two Vietnamese photographers, Don Chow Tin, a former army photographer, and Van Bao, a civilian photographer, recollects some episodes from the war field.
A retired army officer in his late 50s pays quiet tribute to the dead. He is a survivor of the decade-long conflict the Vietnamese call the American War. Don Cong Tin, a former North Vietnamese army photographer, known by his peers as the king of the battlefield. Tin and two soldiers were on patrol when an American helicopter spotted them in the tall grass. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
The helicopter flew around and around, firing at us. It frightened me to death.
Playing dead was their only chance. The soldiers told Tin not to move a muscle. Tin ignored them, taking a wild shot at the helicopter. They warned him again, stay still, but he was too excited to listen.
I wanted to take a picture, a photo of being hunted by a helicopter.
But the light glinting off his lens would be a dead giveaway.
Để mình ghi lại một cái hình ảnh là mình bị trực thăng Mỹ nó bắt. Thế nhưng mà coi như anh chết.
Nothing, the soldiers warned. Shoot nothing, not a picture or a bullet. Just lie there and don't get us killed.
Mình còn nghĩ rằng là lại còn nhìn thấy
Seeing the helicopters, seeing the pilots who were shooting bullets at me, thrilled me. It deeply impressed me.
Van Bao never flinched from taking the picture, no matter what he saw.
nhớ lại.
We cannot forget the past, the scars, the losses.
A civilian photographer, Van Bao's assignment was to document the war at home, to bring people the news, and to inspire them with stirring images. Very few Vietnamese in the North, including photographers, ever glimpsed an American face. The only Americans they saw fell from the sky. February 11th, 1965. Van Bao was covering a battle at Quang Binh, near the border between North and South, when the second American flyer of the war was brought down. Navy Commander Robert Shoemaker.
Cảm giác của tôi đối với viên phi công Mỹ này thì trông vừa to vừa
The
cao.
pilot impressed me because he was both big and tall.
Bằng cái máy ảnh của mình làm sao mà chụp được.
So I wanted to photograph him at the moment he would bend his head as low as possible.
Nhất là cái lúc mà tôi giơ máy lên
And that's what I did.
thì bắt
When
đầu
he
ông
saw
ta
I
cúi
was
đầu
taking a
xuống.
picture,
Cho nên
he
là
bent his head.
cái hình ảnh mà cúi đầu thế này tôi cho là đẹp nhất.
It's interesting to see that Don Con Tin still remembers the aerial attack and Von Bau remembers the build of the American pilot and what he did. These are examples of episodic memory. Eyewitness is a form of episodic memory pertaining to specific events. And eyewitness memory, of course, it has forensic importance also. Several times you are called in the court of law, where you are supposed to claim before the jury that yes, you saw it, and therefore, eyewitness memory becomes important. But then it is also vulnerable to distortion. Verbal report of event might interfere with the visual recall. So, primarily what happens, what you actually record is the visual impression of the event, but then when you testify it in the court of law, you start narrating it. The moment you start converting your visual impressions that you have into the words for presenting it before the jury, there could be an interference, and this could lead to distortion of the eyewitness memory. Look at this example. You see two cars hitting each other. This is what you actually see. But if I ask you to recollect what you have seen, how the accident took place, when you narrate it, this is how you distort it. Okay? So, actually what you saw was this, but when you have to convert your visual impression into words, you have to express it, you reconstruct it and the mental image gets distorted here. So, when you have distorted this, these are the significant attributes that you have added to it. You did not see broken glasses, you did not see that the front panel of the vehicle it was just, it got deformed. None of these things were there in the actual event, but then you add it on your own. And this is what I was referring to, that whenever you have to reconstruct it, you have to verbally explain what you saw, the visual impression that you have gets distorted. November 26, 2008. November 26, 2008 will always be remembered for the Mumbai attack. This is often referred to as 26/11. 164 people were killed and 308 wounded in this terrorist attack. Looking at the magnitude of the event, let us look at three different clippings. One of a news photographer, second of a man in the uniform who participated in the commando operation, and third, an employee of the hotel that was attacked. All three of them are eyewitness of this horrifying event. Look at this news clip where Sebastian D'Souza, a news photographer, recollects the event.
News photographer Sebastian D'Souza, the photo editor of Mumbai Mirror, takes us through that journey.
What really happened and how did you take those pictures that day?
Yeah, it was somewhere around 9:30. We heard some loud explosions. This whole terminus was, empty, but there was loud sounds of, gunfire and grenade blasting. And when I looked towards the exit of the local train terminus, it was the terrorists there. I saw, when I peeped out, I saw two guys in backpack. And they didn't look like terrorists. The young guys, as if they were going out on a trip or something. But no sooner the constable fired. He fired from a street or three from here. Yeah, they returned fire. What the two terrorists did was, one went on the other side, one came from here. So I went into the next train. As he came out, I took my pictures. I got my pictures, I again hid myself. Both of them met. They spoke something, I don't know what. One of them dropped the bag. I tried to get a glimpse of them. These guys had turned around and were heading to the rear of the train. So I said, this is not good for me. I got out of the train, came back to this spot where they had done all the shooting, destruction. I saw all the policemen who were with me dead. I was very cautious because if I had done something hastily like what they did, I would have died.
Perhaps you didn't get a chance to really see them because you were...
No, I just kept shooting. There were many out shaken, you know. That means there was a slight fright in me too because of the gunshots and all that. And most of the time I was trying to avoid they seeing me. Very quick glimpses I got of them. That's why I kept trailing them for more pictures.
As you know, NSG commandos were put into action during 26/11. Sunil Kumar Yadav, NSG commando who was in action during that operation, recollects his experience.
29-year-old Sunil Kumar Yadav, an NSG commando, belongs to Pataudi in Haryana.
हाँ 27 की शाम को ना परली साइड वाली रो के अंदर से उसने दरवाजा खोला मिलिटेंट ने और एक स्प्रे मार दिया और मेरे को पीछे से ना ब्रस्ट लगा, 2 तो बटक में लग गया था और बीपी जैकेट के ऊपर से क्रॉस हो गए वो.
Mr. Amit, the manager of Shamiana restaurant in Hotel Taj, rescued 30 people on that day. Listen to what he later said.
The moment he turns towards the Shamiana and started firing, and I realized that, you know, he's not going to spare anybody. Now I had to do something, and he threw a hand grenade and it blasted in the middle of the restaurant. The people on the other side of the restaurant, they managed to escape from the service entrance, but I had around 30 people, 23 guests, 7 staff on the other side of the restaurant where there is no other way. Somewhere I recollected that there is a door at the pool side which opens into the transformer room of the hotel, and from there it goes out. So I asked the guests to evacuate fast as possible. That point of time I noticed that there was a foreigner, huge foreigner, a 6 feet 6 inch tall guy. He was shot in his arm and was bleeding very badly. And there was a couple who was crying. They told me like, my 10-year-old son has gone to toilet just 3 minutes or 2 minutes before this thing started. I want to get my son. And I was very scared and I had a concern. So I said, ma'am, don't worry, I'll get your son. Because one reason is that I wanted her to go out, probably there is every possibility she dying. And secondly, she disclosing the location where the 30 people are hiding. So I went outside, there's a corridor, I was at one end and the terrorist was on the other end. So he looked at me, started shooting. So I screamed and I tried to move away from there. He threw a hand grenade on me. I still have that noise, you know. It bounced right behind me, just 3 feet distance. I jumped, screamed and I jumped. And I knew that point of time I'm going to be dead. But my luck was so strong that hand grenade never blasted. I came back. I told the couple that your son is going to be fine, trust me. Meanwhile, this person started bleeding very heavily. My boss came, he opened the door. We came out of the transformer room. Immediately a cop's van was stopped. We took the guests to Bombay hospital. You know, whatever my life, the Wednesday onwards, 26 onwards, is all grace life. I always take it as I was dead on 26.
Let me give you another example. We are taking these many examples as they are rare and are experienced by only a small percentage of people around us. On 22nd May 2010, around 6:30 in the morning, Air India Express flight 812 from Dubai to Mangalore overshot the runway and caught fire while landing at the Mangalore International Airport. Only 8 of the 160 passengers and 6 crew members on board survived. 2 of them recollects the event.
दुबई से 1:15 में और इधर उतरे 6:20 में। 6:20 में हाँ। क्या हुआ वहाँ? वो रनवे में उतने का टाइम मैंने गिर गया। राइट शेक होकर सीधे ब्रेक मारा का पहले मारने के बाद में बिल्डिंग फटाफट मार दिया और टाइम में फायर हो गया, पूरा फट गया। वो नीचे कैसे गया? उतना दूर जाके कैसे गिरा? बाद में निकल ब्रेक मारना ना, इसका मारने का टाइम नीचे गिर गया, बिल्डिंग के पास मारा। देखा हम सही। तुम अकेले थे? हम पैसेंजर हमारे हमें करे।
तुम्हारे साथ कितने आदमी और बाहर आ गए?
बाकी हम 4-5 आदमी हम देखा।
हम लोग आने के टाइम में ना नीचे उतारने के टाइम नीचे उतारा थोड़ा फ्लाइट, फिर एक साइड से गया, साइड से गए इधर भी जाके मारा फ्लाइट, वो टाइम आग आ गया, हम लोग नीचे गिर गया, फिर थोड़ा ऊपर थोड़ा जगह हम लोग देखा, उधर से हम लोग भाग गया बाहर, फिर थोड़ा जंगल था साइड में, उधर से बाहर आया तो उधर एक रेलवे ट्रैक था, उधर तक हम लोग आया कैसा भी, उधर से आदमी लोग हम लोग लाके इधर पांच आदमी था।
What we find is that important events in our life are very well remembered. Although there could be a distortion of the actual event, one by and large remembers the experience. Let us now talk about the factors that affect episodic memory. Several factors could affect episodic memory. The primary thing being the amount and the space of practice. How much information that the event contained, that is very important. If you have very small glimpse, very small content, then it is probably easy, and also what is important is that the space or for practice that you got. So, how much is the duration between the event and then the recollection of it. To what extent did you process is another important attribute that will affect episodic memory. If you have gone into the details of it, then it is very easy for you to recollect it, whereas if you have not done so and you have just structurally looked at it at a very superficial level. So, such superficial type of a browsing of an event will never lead you to recollect it better. Are there some retrieval cues? Imagine for example, if I just give you a sound bite, a soundtrack of an accident that you see in a movie, even though the visuals are not present, simply after listening to the soundtrack you can very easily make out what would have happened. So, this is what actually happens in the real life situation. You have an event and you have some significant cues there. If those cues are again presented to you, retrieval becomes easier. If it is not so, it is extremely difficult. And then of course, episodic memory are context dependent and they are also state dependent. In what context did the event happen? If the context is the same, recall becomes easier. It is easy for you to retrieve it. If you are in the same state of mood, for example, then it will be easier for you to recollect it compared to when you are in a different mood state, whereas the event took place in some other state. So, episodic memory is always context as well as state dependent. Now, this is time for us to recapitulate whatever we have discussed with respect to human memory processes.